Well, we've been cruising through the book of James. Love James. Did I say that already? I think I said that already. But hopefully you guys are loving it too and just enjoying just the simple lessons that just how practical it is and how, I don't want to say easy because a lot of times it's kind of difficult to put into action the things that he says, but he makes it so easy to understand. And so we started looking at this book and how James wrote this book to this group that had just been scattered, and they're going through this difficult time. But despite that, he taught them about how to have joy in the face of trials, to consider it pure joy when we face trials of many kind. And then he talked about how these trials in life are unavoidable. And so what is our attitude going to be through it? But when we persevere through it, we can receive the reward that's waiting on the other end. And then also, just as the trials in life are unavoidable, temptation in life is unavoidable. And so he gave us a strategy of how we can overcome the temptation. So if you've missed one of the past 2 weeks, I would encourage you to hop over onto our social media and check those out and get caught up. Well, this week we're going to keep going, and again, we're going to see a lot of the themes that I kind of said that we would see throughout the book in that first week. A lot of references to Proverbs this week, so you can get ready for that. I mentioned a little bit about that, how he really tied in these different tones and things through the Old Testament and really connected it with the teachings of Jesus. And then also, again, we see those very direct things of what we should do and what we shouldn't do. So this morning, it's going to be these simple things, but these few simple things that if we put them into action, I think we'll just have a massive impact on our lives and a massive impact on our relationships, whether that's with your spouse, with your friends, with your coworker. These little keys that he gives us will have a massive impact on our relationships, whether we respond with doing it or if we pass up on that warning and we don't, one way or the other. So we're going to pick it up in verse 19, right where we left off last week, and this is what he says. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Therefore, get rid of all moral filth and the evil that is so prevalent, and humbly accept the word planted in you, which can save you. So that's it, simple. I wanted to keep it kind of shorter this morning. I was going to keep going and do a little bit of a bigger chunk, but I wanted to keep it short and simple. Is that okay? A little shorter, a little simple, and I want to just really pound in on these things and then leave with the challenge of let's just do it. Like, let's just focus on really doing these things. This morning, we were having breakfast, and my son, Jack, it's funny, Jack's always very interested with what I'm going to talk about. I kind of commented on that a couple of weeks ago and how he made fun of me because I was going to talk about Frozen. Well, he kind of burned me again this morning. We're sitting at breakfast this morning, and he goes, "Oh, Daddy, what are you going to talk about in church this morning?" And I said, I'm going to be talking about being quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. He goes, oh, cool, but like what story are you going to talk about? Like what Bible story are you going to talk about? I was like, well, it's not really like a story. I'm not going to really talk about a Bible story. I'm just going to talk about that verse. And he said, oh, so you're just going to say that one verse and then say bye and leave? I said, you know what, maybe I'll just try that. Let's see how that goes. So I'll do a little bit more than just simply say the verse, but I do want to kind of keep it simple and not try and overly sermonize this and make it too complicated because it's so direct. He tells us what to do here. Be quick to listen, be slow to speak, and slow to become angry. So it's not like, hang on, what was that? What do you want me to do? So what's the real meaning of this? We got to really dig down deep and look into the context of what could this possibly mean for us today. It's not that difficult. So we'll go back through and break it apart. So it starts with dear brothers and sisters. And then he says, take take note of this. I love that. Take note of this, okay? Like, write this down. Don't forget what I'm about to say. And I love this because James, so he gives a lot of commands throughout the book. We talked about that over and over. He's telling us what to do. But right here, he's like, hey, listen, write this one down, okay? Everyone get your paper and pen ready. Don't forget what I'm about to say. So he kind of like hedges it and makes this moment to mark it. It's like, get ready for it, okay? Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. But who is he talking to? Well, he's talking to everyone, okay? Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. So I don't think that I probably needed to share that, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands no free passes this morning. Be like, I don't know if that really applies to me. I mean, everybody. This is for all of us. Who's he talking to? He's talking to all of us. And we should be quick to listen. We should be slow to speak and slow to become angry. One of the things that James is most popular with one of the things he talks about that is the most popular thing that he talks about. I'm not saying that right. One of the things that he kind of talks about that has become popular is how he talks about the tongue, and he talks about taming the tongue, and we'll get a little bit more into that in the coming weeks. But he talks about the power of our words and the power of the tongue, and we start to see kind of the beginning of that right here. To be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And so he is teaching us to have self-control over our emotions and how we should communicate. To do these 3 simple things right here: quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. How many of you guys can testify to this? Sometimes our big mouths can get us in some big trouble. Okay, amen? All right, okay. We got a couple of people say, yep, that's me, right? We got big mouths, and our big mouths can sometimes get us into some big trouble. Almost all the headache that we cause probably comes right out of our mouths, and we do it to ourselves. We have the power with our words to create big problems. And so Proverbs, I told you we were going to mention Proverbs 10 verse 19 says this: when words are many, transgression is not lacking, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent. You guys ever been arrested before? Not as many hands on that one. Oh, couple. But what do they do when you get arrested? What do they say? You have the right to remain silent. Okay, right, for your protection. Shut up before you dig yourself into a hole deeper. You don't have to say anything here. With your words, you can incriminate yourself. You can make this work. Because why? Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. I watched Cops growing up. Come on, right? So right there, it's like, hey, keep your big mouth shut before you get yourself in trouble. Go find a lawyer and let that guy talk for you. You just shut it. Zip your lips. So we're talking about communicating. And communication is so big, especially if you're here and you're married and you have someone that you live with and you're just with them like all day, every single day. Communication is such a big thing. Just the other day, my wife, this is big for me. I'm really taking this to heart. Just the other day, my wife got mad at me. And she was like, I feel like you're not even listening to me. And I said, that's a really weird way to start a conversation. But it's difficult. It's difficult, right? I think that's why he says, like, take note of this. I know. I'm going to say it, but you got to write this down. Don't forget it. Take notes. Be quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to become angry. This is not what comes natural for us in the flesh. This is not what comes natural to us. We are usually quick to speak, and we just skip the listening part, and we get offended and we get angry when we hear things that we don't like, and then we feel like we need to justify ourselves, and we need to be heard, and we need to be understood. So this is not what comes natural, and what James is completely flipping it and saying, do what is completely unnatural. You got to flip it. You're going to feel like you just want to, they're going to be talking, you just want to talk, you want to interject, you want to fix, you want to move on, I want to say my point. We have to hear. We have to be quick to listen. And then we all want to speak. We hear it, we see it, we want to talk, I want to reply, I want to get my opinion out there. And then when we get offended, it's like, oh, Sometimes it can happen so quick. So James is calling us to cool the jets and rework this process of how we do this. I remember growing up, I heard like all the time, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that's for a reason, right? Like it's literally a physical reminder to be quick to listen. You have more ears than the amount of mouths that you have, so be quick to listen and slow to speak. But we all want to be heard, right? We want to be heard. We want to be understood. And when you feel like you're not understood, or when you feel like they're just not quite getting what you're saying, it becomes incredibly frustrating, right? It's like, I have to say my part. I have to complete my thought. You're not getting it, and I need to fix what you think about me. I have to say it. I got to get it all out there. And what's crazy is that now we live in this wild world where we don't just have this conflict in person, but we can have conflict all over the internet all day long, right? Like we communicate in so many different crazy ways now. So, we can, have conflict with our coworkers or our spouse, and then we get on the internet and we see something we don't like, and we want to, throw that reply out there. You get a text message, and then you want to send that reply back. So we communicate in so many different ways, and I think more than ever before. And sometimes you just feel like, I just have to say something. I just have to say something. I got to get it out there. I have to reply to this. But what James is saying is cool the jets, take a moment, take a breather, and then ask, is this going to produce the righteousness that God desires? Take a moment, cool your jets, and I get it. I feel it too. Like when you're on Facebook and you see someone that has the wrong political view, the one... which is anyone that's opposite of yours. Because if all the politicians would just listen to you, the world would be a much better place. But so someone has the wrong political view, and it's just like, no, that's not right. Nope, that's not going to work. This is not, and it starts to bubble up in you, and you're just like, I gotta, right? I just got to get it out there. I got to say my part. I get it. I feel it too. But our big mouths can get us in some big trouble. So we have to start with listening. Take those 2 ears and put them to work, right? I think that so many problems begin with skipping that listening process when we don't fully understand people. And what's funny is we were just talking about how frustrating it is when we don't feel like we're understood. But then what do? We want to talk. We want to make ourselves understood, and then that person feels like they're not being misunderstood. It's like, right? And it's just this escalation. So what we should do as followers of Jesus is to take this wisdom that James gives us and to take that moment to listen and to breathe and to seek to understand, right? That's why we call them misunderstandings. Have you ever been in the midst of a problem and then you look back and it's like, oh, wait, this just happened because you thought I meant this, but I didn't really mean that. It was just this. And like we're like putting this malicious intent onto someone when really it was just a miscommunication or a misunderstanding. And that's when we just fire the words back and forth, we just dig that hole deeper. Proverbs 18 Verse 13 says this, if one gives an answer before he hears, it is his folly and shame. Right? So speaking before you know all the facts, speaking before you have adequately taken the time to hear will lead to you embarrassing yourself. In common terms, it says if you don't take the time and you just want to get your words out there before you've heard, it's going to lead to you ending up embarrassing yourself. It's going to be folly. It is going to be shame for you. So we should never seek to talk too soon. To take that breather. Don't feel like you got to get your words out there right away, that you got to instantly give your reply. It says that if you give your answer too soon, you're going to end up humiliating yourself. You're going to end up looking like a fool. It's going to lead to your own folly and your own shame. Opening your mouth too quickly is only going to lead to trouble. So maybe if you don't hear anything else this morning, the one thing you need to hear is maybe error on the side of silence. Error on the side of just zipping it, right? And here's what's cool is that James is going to talk as he goes through this, he's going to teach us of how to become wise. And then what's really cool is even if you're not wise, he's going to teach us how to have the appearance of being wise. It's really funny. He says this in Proverbs 17, verse 28, even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent, right? So even a fool who can just zip it is considered wise. And if you can just close your mouth, just keep those lips shut, you will be deemed intelligent. Isn't that nice? Like, see how easy it is? All we got to do is zip it. Take that moment, cool our jets, and even if we're total fools, if we can just keep silent, we're considered wise. And if we can just close our lips, we're deemed intelligent. That's so good. You guys are laughing. It's like, right? Like, it is. It's kind of funny, right? I think most of the time, I think the reason that we kind of laugh and giggle at that is most of the time is we feel like, I have to prove how smart I am, right? Like, I have to talk more so you understand how much I know. I have to say a lot of words so that I can kind of prove how much I know and prove how much I know about this and why I know so much. And the more that I say, the more you're going to understand. And it's like we have to prove it. And so it's kind of opposite to what comes natural to us. But the Bible says if you just keep it zipped, just stay silent, you'll be considered wise. If you guys know Mark Twain says something that is just gold. He said, it's better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to talk and remove all doubt. Isn't that good? Just zip it. Being slow to speak, and I want to say this, being slow to speak doesn't mean that you never speak. Right? It doesn't mean you just keep it zipped forever and you never talk and you never say anything and you never get to reply. That's not what he's saying. He says to be slow to speak, to hesitate to get those words out there, to calm down, cool the jets, and make sure that your words are being born out of wisdom and not out of this emotion or whatever you might feel at the time. So we're slow to speak. It doesn't mean that we never speak, but we're just going to slow it down and make sure that we have the words that we want to say, that we pick our words wisely. So, we need to seek to understand. Seek to understand, to really listen, to be curious, to ask questions, to listen carefully. And this is an incredible skill. When I was 22, I wanted to be a pastor, like from the time I was young. That was like my dream job. That's what I wanted to do. And I always dreamed of the day that I would, finally like get that title, pastor. Like, I don't know, in my brain it was like becoming an astronaut, But I so badly as a teenager, I would work with my youth pastor, and I so much wanted to be like him, and I looked up to him, and then I spent time in different internships, and then as a director in youth ministry, and then finally I got ordained, and I got my first job as a youth pastor. I was like, oh, I did it. It's there. It's in front of my name. I'm Pastor Zack now, right? And so I'm 22 years old. I get my first job. I'm a pastor. And just shortly after this, some parents of a student in my ministry wanted to sit down and talk with me. I said, okay, cool. And they said, we want to talk about our son. We're having some problems. I'm like, okay, all right. Well, we sit down and talk, and I'm thinking, oh boy, what'd they catch him doing? What's he getting into? Well, we sit down and talk, and they said that he stole thousands of dollars in cash from a family member and then spent all of it. He just blew it all, and it was all gone. And I was like, oh, that's not what I was expecting. I think this might be a little above my pay grade here. Like, I've always wanted to be the guy, but now I'm the guy, and you plop that on me. I kind of want to just punt the ball. Someone else take this. And so they come to me, and they're like, will you talk to him? And I'm like, what am I supposed to say? Like, what am I supposed to say to this? Is a crazy thing he just did. Like, I wasn't expecting to get into this kind of stuff. I thought it was going to be like, hey, sin, don't do this. Stop listening to that music. Don't watch that movie, And then boom. And so we scheduled for me to meet with this student, and I was kind of like in agony, like, oh man, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? What am I supposed to say to help this person? And I got so caught up and anxious of like, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? Like, oh, they're looking to me to have the answers, and I don't have them. I don't have the answer. I don't know what to do. And so I decided I was going to ask a lot of questions. And so I sat down with this kid, and I just started asking questions. And I didn't even have to talk that much. And what I realized was that as he was talking and sharing, as we got deeper and deeper into the layers of like why he actually did what he did. And I found that we were spending so much time like focusing on this action that bubbled up in the surface, and we completely missed the heart of what was going on there. And just by asking these questions, I didn't have to be this like wise, incredible person who had all knowledge and I know how to solve this problem. I just asked a lot of questions, and then from there, he developed this really incredible humility where he understood what he did, and he acknowledged it, and he wanted to do what was right, and so he went and got a job, and he started working, and then him and I would meet every single week for years, and we would talk, and he just became so humble, and he paid back every single penny that he had taken, and just an incredible story of an incredible transformation. And I look back, and I see how God used me and his life in such a big way, and how I really didn't do that much. Like, it just came to just sitting down and just listening. And so through my head, that I was after we had this conversation, I realized, wow, that went so well. I spent so much time like, oh, maybe if I say this, how will he take that? Oh, maybe if I say this, how is he going to take that? And if I say it like this, is he going to, get angry? And just we had this incredible conversation. Then we developed an amazing relationship, and I saw how God worked in his life. Listening is such a powerful gift. If you have ever had a friend that just listens to you, what an incredible gift that is. And so we get the opportunity to be that gift to someone else. I have a friend, a lot of you guys might know him. His name's Tony. And Tony would just listen. He was such a good listener. And I went through a time in my life where I was just frustrated with some things. And we would go out to breakfast, and he would just listen. And sometimes he would talk and he would share things with me, but it was never before he listened and heard what was going on. He would ask me intentional questions. And a lot of times that God worked through him in so many ways, and it wasn't because he was just fixing me and solving all my problems, but just because, he was there, and I already knew in my heart how God was calling me to handle these things. I just had a sounding board to talk through these things, and he got to kind of gently guide me into the truth that God was leading me to. And so having a listener in your life is so good, because that frustration can kind of just build up. And when I just had a friend that would just sit down and listen and be like, oh man, thanks for hearing me. Like, just thanks for sitting there and listening to me. And so we can be that gift to other people if we're just willing to listen. And when we listen, we are communicating. We're communicating that we care about that person, that we care about what they're going through. And you hear right that actions speak louder than words. I think if actions speak louder than words, then listening might just be the loudest action there is. So we got to be quick to listen. And then he tells us to be slow to speak. Slow to speak. This is very interesting, but in the Greek, slow to speak actually means shut your big mouth. Just kidding. I made that up. Right? We don't, like I said, it's not complicated. We don't have to make this, what do we do? Well, being slow to speak means hesitate to speak, to pause before you speak. He's challenging us to not get caught up in the emotions or whatever we might be going through and just fire back, but to be slow to speak. Is anyone here on Twitter? I know we got a lot of people on social media. I love Twitter. I don't ever tweet, but I just watch Twitter and I look at things on Twitter. Now I use so much self-control to never reply to anything. But I feel like social media is so, we kind of talked about this a little bit with communication, but Twitter I think is like the biggest thing, because you instantly, something happens and then it's just like, it's trending on Twitter. And so what's crazy is on Twitter, I like Twitter because you can kind of follow the topics that you like. So I watch a lot of hockey. Did you guys know that? Maybe I didn't need to say that. So I follow a lot of people, in the hockey world. And what's crazy is as soon as something happens in a game, something controversial or something happens, I take out my phone, I go on Twitter, and instantly I'm seeing people's opinions, what they think about it, what this guy thinks about it, and just instantly I remember growing up reading the newspaper. Did anyone read the newspaper? I remember when I was young, waking up, and it was like, Dad, can I have the sports page? And I would, let's see what happened last night. It's like, how crazy. Like, dude, that was last night. That was like 12 hours ago, man. So yesterday. Like, what are you talking about? That is like one guy's opinion. I read 1,000 opinions about that last night. So it's just wild how we can just instantly see everyone's reaction. We live in this instant world where something happens and then we fire out the opinions, and now we're going to get the other side's view. And now with response, it's just like, whoa. We can't shut up. Like, we have no self-control. And so I think that these words are so big for us today. And maybe our generation now needs to take this to heart more than ever before. It's like be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to touch your keyboard. Like, use some self-control here. Be slow to send that tweet. Be slow to click reply. Be slow to send that message, right? We got to have control in the way that we communicate. And it's just so instantaneous. And then the other crazy thing is now us, a bunch of how many friends do you guys have on Facebook? It's like some of us have thousands of friends. It's like, I had no idea how popular I was. Thousands of friends, oh my, or even hundreds. Like a lot of you guys have at least 100 friends, right? Come on, you toot your horns a little bit here. But we have these audiences that are bigger than ever before. Like everyone can pull their phone out of their pocket right now and say something to thousands of people. That's just insane. Like, we never had an audience like that. Can you imagine? Like, you'd have to gather an audience. I have something to say. I need hundreds of people to come listen to me. Now it's just like, there it is. Hundreds of people saw it. So how crazy. I think that brings such a bigger weight to the words that we say. And then also, when things go on the internet, they stay out there. You can delete it, but we still got screenshots, buddy, right? Once we throw that stuff out there, it is out there. So we got to fight that urge to be the keyboard warrior. And it's like, I see it, and I'm gonna own the people on the other side, and boom, 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 fire back. And I think instead of feeling that urgency to get our voice out there, we should have an urgency to understand. And now, before I go too far, I want to make sure that I say by listening doesn't mean that we're affirming, right? I get it. There's things out there that people say and it's just wrong. There's things that people say and it's just straight up sinful. So I'm not saying it's like, hey, don't ever say anything about that. Just stay far away. Don't touch it. Just let that. That's not what I'm saying. It's let's be slow to speak and make sure that we approach it with wisdom. And before we go in there to fight the fight, that person knows that they've been heard. I mean, when someone really listens to you and really understands, then when they have something to say, it brings a whole new weight. Because it wasn't just you trying to stuff your views down my throat, as I'm trying to stuff my views down your throat. And we don't get anywhere, but we're all just angry and just feel like I got to put it somewhere. So, there it is. When we love and we listen, then our words are received so much differently. So Jesus, we see this with Jesus. He would go and share meals with sinners, with people that the religious people looked on like, what are you doing with those people? What are you doing sharing your time with these people? And so sometimes people might have the wrong opinion. Some people might be doing things wrong and saying things wrong. And so by listening, that doesn't mean that we're providing an endorsement of what they're doing. And it doesn't mean that we're never going to say anything. We're just making sure that we follow this process, that we're speaking with wisdom. So then when I do approach it and I do say something, then it can be received with a heart of love, that they know you're just judgmental, or you're just this. No. I've listened, I've heard, I've understood, and now I can speak the truth in love. And so many times I think we get into these bickering arguments because we don't feel understood. I didn't get my point across. All right, I just got to say one more thing. And so whether you have the correct opinion or not, that's not what it's about. It's about listening. It's about making that person feel valued, feel heard. And so it's not always about what's right. It's about listening. And when we're too quick to let me just say my part, all it's saying to that person is, hey, you didn't hear what I said, right? You don't care about what I have to say. So rather than being able to have a productive conversation, we're just in this place where you feel unheard and I feel unheard, and we're just shouting back and forth at each other. So we absolutely can speak, but we got to be slow to speak. We should hesitate to speak and make sure that we used both of those ears adequately before we open the big mouth. Being slow to speak is an act of wisdom. Making sure that we're choosing to talk and use our words wisely than just speaking out of our emotions. And then finally, he says to be slow to become angry. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. So, we start by listening. Then we pause to speak. We choose our words wisely. And then finally, we've got to make sure that this anger is not bubbling up in us, to make sure that we are slow to anger. So he's telling us we got to have self-control over our temper, right? You should be slow to anger. So that means he's telling us that we can do it, right? So we don't get the excuse to just say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I just got a short fuse. Oh, I'm sorry, I got a short temper." No. We don't get to make the excuses here. He says you need to control it. You need to be slow to anger. So we don't get the excuse. We don't get the free pass. Remember, he's talking to everyone. We have to have self-control. There was a man, and he had a really awesome wife. And he was talking to his wife one day, and he said, "Babe, you're so incredible. Whenever we get in arguments or disagreements, you never shout, you never raise your voice. How is it that you can control your anger so well?" And she said, "Well, when I'm angry, I just clean the toilets." And the husband looked at her confused and said, "What? How does that help?" And she said, "I use your toothbrush." So, I don't advise that, but we have to control our anger. We have to be the ones in control of our anger. And then James tells us why this time. He says that we need to be control of our anger. We need to be slow to anger because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Does not produce the righteousness that God desires. So when we are quick to anger and this anger shows up, there are fruits of that anger that pop up after. Our anger begins to produce things, and those things are not what God desires. So we have to make sure that we take the pot off the kettle and we don't leave it there boiling. We got to control our angers. We got to be in control of our temper. So this was really cool. We talked about earlier how Proverbs told us how we can become wise, and we can have the image of being wise if we can just simply zip it. Well, Proverbs says almost the same thing about anger. In Proverbs 14, verse 29, it says, "Whoever is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who has a hasty temper exalts folly." If we're slow to anger, we have great understanding. And then it says this in Proverbs 16, verse 32, "Whoever is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and the one who rules his spirit than he who takes a city." So it's saying if you can just control your anger, if you can have self-control over your temper, you are more than a mighty warrior, more than a conqueror, by simply just having self-control over our anger. How cool is this? It's like it makes it so easy. Okay, so all I got to do is zip my lips, and I take steps for becoming more wise. And if I can just control my anger, I'm considered more mighty than this conqueror who takes a city. And then he tells us in verse 21 to get rid of all moral filth and the evil that is prevalent, and humbly accept the word planted in you, which can save you. So get rid of all moral filth. Other versions say to put it away. And this term that he uses, it's about like taking off your clothes and changing your clothes. And so it's like you're taking off what you're wearing. You're removing the moral filth and the evil that's so prevalent among us. It's like we're taking it off and we're putting something new on. We're removing it. And then let the word be planted in you. This is another one of those times where he uses this imagery, and I love that the word that is planted in us. If you've ever planted a seed, right, you dig the hole, you plant the seed, you put it in there, and now it's below the surface. Then what's it do? It develops these roots, and then it grows up, and it eventually breaks through the surface. I love that imagery. It's like the Word of God is planted in you. And it takes root within us. And then what's it do? It breaks out through the surface and it shows up in our life. So we got to remove the junk of the world, remove the evil, remove the moral filth, and cling to that Word that has been planted in our heart. Let those roots grow and to let it push through and break through the surface. So let's just do it. Let's be quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to become angry. What an impact that would make on our relationships. Let's be quick to listen. Let's make sure that we take advantage of those 2 ears that God gave us. Let's be curious. Let's be understanding. Even in the moments where we see something that seems unjust, or we see something that just seems wrong, or we see something even when it's sinful, we want to make sure that we know that we can communicate with our actions. So we are going to communicate that we want to understand. And then we pause. We take that moment to choose our words wisely to speak. We're going to be slow to speak. Not that we're never going to speak. We're going to talk. We're going to share the truth, and we're going to speak the truth in love, but we're making sure that we've taken that first step. And then we got to have control of our tempers. No one gets a free pass. We cannot let this anger rise up in us. We have to take the warning that James says that when this anger comes, there's going to be junk that follows. So when you feel the teapot starting to simmer, you got to cool the jets. You got to take it off the burner. We have to be in control of our temper, knowing what's coming is destructive. And then let's cling to the Word of God and let the truth of His Word break through the surface of our lives. Let me pray for us. Jesus, we love you. And God, we thank you for who you are. And God, we thank you for this book of James and how simple and practical it is. God, I pray that we would be challenged by your word this morning, by these commands that James gives us, that each of us would be quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to become angry. God, as we go back into this world, we know there's a lot of junk out there. And we know that it's easier now to communicate and get our point across than ever before, and we have a bigger audience than ever before. But God, I pray that we would be wise, that we would be listeners, that God, the people that we come in contact with would know that we care about them, that we want to hear, that we want to seek to understand. And that God, that when we do speak, that we would speak your truth, that we would speak out of love, that we would speak in a place out of wisdom, that we have first hesitated to speak, that we've paused to make sure that we are choosing our words with wisdom. And God, I pray that each of us would be in control of our anger, knowing that the enemy wants us to simmer so that junk can show up in our life. And God, I pray that we would have the self-control, that we would take the warning of James, that we would have control of our tempers, and God, that we would cling to your word, the word of God, the truth of the gospel that has the power to save. That God, that your truth would break through the surface of our lives. That God, through the way that we live, people would see the truth. That we would live as a reflection of you, Jesus, as we run back into this world. God, we love you, and we thank you for who you are. It's in the name